Let's move in. Let's move in, everyone, so we can get started soon. Please move. The rabbi requested that people move forward to facilitate a group discussion. Did you notice if there was anyone else out in the foyer at this point?
I hear people in the social hall.
Oh, I just want to hustle them in from the social hall to get in. Margie, could you just go in there and tell them to come in? We're going to get started. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll be beginning. We just want to get a few more people in so we can start. I think I'll just get started. Okay. Oh, wait. Here it comes. Welcome, everyone, and Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for being here today for our Shabbat Kallah program. Today we are honored to welcome, let me introduce myself. I'm Brenda Tuller, and Maddie Kalb and I co-chair the Adult Education Committee. Today we are honored to welcome Rabbi Mary Zamore, who will be presenting The Power of the Fork, Eating with Ethics. Rabbi Zamore is the executive director of the Women's Rabbinic Network, a partner organization of the Reform Movement. For over 40 years, WRN has worked to narrow the wage gap, promote paid leave, create safer, respectful Jewish communities, and promote equity, while also supporting and advocating for WRN rabbis. Ordained by Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion, she proudly served congregations in central New Jersey for 18 years before joining WRN. Rabbi Zamore has also served as a substitute rabbi at MRT High Holy Day services. For our program, Rabbi will present a two-part study session based on the anthology, The Sacred Table, Creating a Jewish Food Ethic. If some of you may have noticed, the books were available on the lobby table if you're interested, and just follow the directions of putting your name down. The program will include an interactive discussion connecting personal dietary practice to ancient Jewish texts and explore the multifaceted Jewish relationship with food. You know how we love food. Its production, integrating values such as ethics, community, and spirituality into our dietary practice. Along the way, participants will learn the foundational Jewish values that can shape dietary practice. This will be two sessions. Session 1 will begin immediately following its introduction and will run till 2:30. At 2:30, we will have our refreshment break in the social hall. And that'll run from 2:30 to 3. At session 2 will run from 3 to 4:30, where we will move back into the sanctuary, and it will be live streamed. Oh, it is live streamed. I mean, it's session 2. Okay. Now, before we begin, Rabbi Zamore will lead us in the blessing for Torah study.
And I forgot to turn this on, so we're going to go with this. It is good to see everyone. And let's see if Renee, if I can get this all by myself. I think so. Test. It's not lighting up. So. Okay, now it's on. Okay. Hoping to not just stand here, so we'll see if this, yep, great. So it's wonderful to be back. I very much appreciated your generous offer to come back and do some teaching after I was here 2 high holidays ago for a cameo appearance. And today we're going to be thinking together about Judaism and food and the intersection, especially of liberal Judaism and food. So let's start with that blessing. And we say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who commands us to busy ourselves and to engage in the study of Torah. Amen. And I'm thrilled that not only to be with my beloved friend, Rabbi Edelman, but also my friends, Rabbi Bergson and Rabbi Messenger, all WRN members as well. So, and to be here at Rabbi Presand's congregation. And welcome to you, whoever you may be out there live streaming right now. So it's good to be together. We're going to be looking at the screen in a second, but I'm going to give you the punchline that's going to be the thread throughout our whole afternoon together. So I am here to think about together, and that's what the sacred table is. We talk about that buffet of choices, that here we are as Reform Jews, liberal Jews, progressive Jews, whatever you identify as. And in many ways, when we talk about food, and especially kashrut, the dietary system, very frequently, we who are in this segment of religious Judaism say, well, that is something the Orthodox do. That is something that we don't do. Or perhaps we do in part. So we're going to explore that and interrogate that, because I feel that we actually do keep kashrut. We do keep kosher as a broad community. Not speaking about what any individual does, but I would even argue, and I have continued to argue, that even as individuals, we do engage and think about these issues, and that it is actually not something that we just shunt aside and say, this is not for us. And I think part of it is the way that it has been kind of sold and packaged as just a one-shot deal. Rabbi Richard Levy of blessed memory used to teach and write about the fact that when we talk about our Shabbat practices, we liberal Jews have no problem saying we celebrate Shabbat, and fill in that blank for many other ritual practices in Judaism. So for example, I'm assuming that everybody drove a car here this Saturday Shabbat afternoon, that you used electricity. Maybe you used money today. Maybe you went to work today. Maybe you went shopping. There are many things that you did which are perfectly fine from our Reform point of view, and yet none of us would say to each other, oh, you don't celebrate Shabbat, you don't have ownership of that category in Judaism, Shabbat observer. Yet with food, we tend to do this all or nothing bucket. So what we're going to think about today is how we can think of a much more nuanced relationship with that intersection of Jewish dietary practice and what it can do for us to be able to engage in it and to have a healthy, good relationship with it, and therefore Judaism. So that's where we're going to start today. And then we're going to make it even more complicated, because I'm challenging you first to think about your life as an individual, and it's the snapshot of where you are at this moment. People are dynamic, interesting human beings. We are inconsistent. We intend to do things, and sometimes we don't do them, or, well, a lot of us don't do them, right? And we are constantly evolving and growing and challenging ourselves in different ways. It's not just an evolution in one direction. It's quite a roller coaster in many different directions. So our discussion today is just the snapshot of where you are today, and to think about the values that Judaism brings us, and to think about, well, are these things that speak to me right now? Are these things that I aspire to? Is this something that I've thought about before? Is this somewhere where I can grow into either intellectually or spiritually? So that's the challenge I'm putting in front of you as an individual. But then, of course, it gets much more complicated. If you live with other human beings, then it gets more complicated. And if you are in community with other human beings, whatever that may be, whether it's in a synagogue or around a Thanksgiving table or anywhere else, or going out to dinner or breakfast or whatever else, the minute we put in other people into the equation, it gets much more interesting. So that's what we're going to explore over today's session. And if we have time, we're going to also dive into a little really cool tech study just to have extra fun. So what I have done with this pile, and I have a second pile, so we're going to start with this pile. These are the handouts. They're going to be on the screen too. You will see when you open your handout that you may have a marking, a blue marking. This is your food value. I'm going to explain when everybody gets these. So we're going to hand those out first. If you don't want to have one of those food values, not the specific food value, any food value, you don't need to take from that pile. I have a pile of blank ones, but the goal here is to make sure that they're all represented, because as we talk, this is going to be interactive.
It's difficult to see the screen. That's why everyone has handouts coming in
Yeah.
your direction.
And mostly we're going to be talking. So even those of you who are on the streaming, mostly this is going to be oral. So at least for this part. We're just going to all work together on this. So when those are handed out, which I think we're almost close to doing, so raise your hand if you still need to get a handout. Let's see, we're almost there. Let's see. Okay, so those are all the marked ones. So now we can hand out the unmarked ones. Nobody needs to share. Okay, but if you have one that is, we need all of the marked ones to be distributed and to be taken. So, okay, so if you want to open your packet and find, if you have a marked one, and find your value, just take a look. Ooh, that's very dark. Now, you have to find the balance between actually being able to read the sheets and read the screen. We're not mostly being on the screen. So for instance, number one, you just need to keep in mind that your value is sanctifying Shabbat and holidays with home-based meals, which include symbolic foods. And for instance, I gave examples, like on Shabbat, we have the challah. Okay, so Passover, we have a Seder plate overflowing with reminders of foods that we eat as part of the mitzvah that every generation, everyone is obliged to regard themselves as though they came out of Egypt. So I'm not going to dive more into that. So everyone has found their value on their sheets? Okay, good. Okay, so now we're going to go off the sheet. We're going to go out of the box. And everybody, today's Saturday, it's Shabbat. So I'm going to challenge you to think about what you eat normally on a weekday. Not a Saturday, but a weekday, a normal, everyday weekday. Okay? Might be the same thing you eat on a Saturday, may be different, but people tend to do different practices on weekends, so I don't like to focus on the weekends. I like to focus on the weekdays. Weekdays are a little bit more buttoned down, as you say. Okay, so everybody's now thought in their mind what you ate, and now I'm going to ask you to share. So would someone like to tell us what they ate for breakfast? No judgment. I have heard everything. I've taught this in dozens and dozens and dozens of communities. Everybody here, no judgment. Okay.
Rabbi, I have a question. Do
Yeah.
you want one particular meal?
I just want breakfast.
Breakfast.
Just
Okay.
breakfast, only breakfast. I don't want to hear about your lunch, your dinner, just breakfast.
Okay, I'll start real fast. My breakfast is typically poached egg with a bowl of mixed vegetables that are steamed. and some nuts.
Again. Yeah.
So it's a veggie mixture that are steamed, some nuts, and I use healthy oils on the vegetables.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
I love it.
Okay. Wait. We're not jumping yet. Don't worry. Okay. So now the question is this kosher? And what values, like if you have a food value, I only want you to comment on your food value. Folks who have nothing marked in your packet, you're welcome to jump into the discussion. But is there a food value, Jewish food value here? So first of all, when I said is it kosher, everyone bobbed their heads up and down. So my question now is why? Why is it kosher? Okay, you're a ringer, so we're going to put you on the short list. Okay, so Grace? And please introduce yourself with your name when you speak.
Hi, Grace Doctorow. I was going to give my breakfast, but okay. So why is it kosher?
Yeah, why is it kosher?
Because it doesn't have any hazara. It's no pork, no meat and milk attached to it.
Okay, so you could make that argument that there's no treif. You said hazar, no pork. So yeah, maybe it's kosher. Okay. Anybody else want to?
I should add the eggs are organic.
Organic. Okay. Okay. No, that's actually important.
Yes,
So-
because
so-
of what the chickens are fed.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Or organic. And yeah, please. Right. Yeah. Bob.
Cereal and a banana.
No.
We're, s-
I know you're all anxious to share your breakfast.
we're analyzing my breakfast.
Yeah, we're taking a moment to think about this breakfast. Don't worry,
Okay.
we'll get to a few other folks. We're not going to
Any
get to
other,
everyone,
Any other comments? Why it could
Is
be
it-
kosher.
right? Okay. Yeah, you.
Alice Berman. So actually, I didn't realize this was going to connect, but just recently I saw a little video from ShopRite's kosher food section. And it was about ensuring that vegetables would be kosher, and they all have to be checked, double-checked, triple-checked, and washed and strained to avoid any insects or residue of insects
Okay.
on them. So depending on where you get your vegetables, one of the things they said was skip frozen broccoli altogether because you can't get into it to look for any of this contamination.
Okay. So yes, thank you. And I would say we have to be careful about using the language of one Jewish point of view as the Jewish point of view. So I didn't.
So that was a perspective.
Absolutely. Well said.
I should add, most of the vegetables are organic. The ones that are in the category of high pesticides, and I follow the guidelines. The ones
So-
that have lower pesticides, I buy conventional.
Okay, so Brenda is emphasizing that her organic vegetables. For people who take the point of view that was shared in this video, that things need to be checked 500 times and washed 300 times in order to say that it's kosher, not to have any residue, not even bugs actively, but residue of bugs, that actually organic is worse because the organic pesticides kill fewer bugs. But does anyone have a food value from my handout that is your food value, right? Your special food value that you've been assigned to watch for? You're the one, yes, that maybe connects?
I'm the other Brenda.
The other Brenda, thank you.
Yeah, I'm Brenda Atlas, the T is silent. I got number 7, and everybody's going to hear me say, I don't eat bacon every day, but it has to be well done. And when it's the bacon, egg, and cheese from Windward Deli by the train tracks, I have the cheese on the side.
Okay.
Like my mother-in-law who claimed to be kosher at the nursing home and took the pepperoni off the pizza and ate it later.
Okay. So Brenda, first of all, thank you for that vulnerable, honest honesty, which I love, because I would say only about 50% of the communities I go to, anybody is willing to fess up in their community to eating bacon during this conversation. So, yay you. So seriously, but we're not actually discussing what you ate for breakfast. We're still on Brenda, and we're asking, this Brenda, adult ed Brenda, and what we are focusing on is what food value do you hear? I gave you a list of Jewish food values. When Brenda keeps telling us, with great pride, appropriately, that this is organic eggs, that these are organic vegetables, low pesticide. She's thinking about which vegetables are produced with more pesticides, fewer pesticides. What values may this reflect? Okay, so Phil?
Oh, I know.
So actually, Grace and I have had conversations that
Jewish value.
right. So I have health, right? And
Okay.
so clearly Brenda is in control of, is exercising portion control, right? Which is a challenge for me, for probably a lot of
Okay,
people.
I didn't actually hear that, but we're just focusing on organic. So
Right. So,
yeah.
oh, just on organic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of health, you raised the issue that organic could mean more bugs in the,
Okay,
in the,
but so
I could-
could you read the value into the microphone?
Okay, so health,
you find the
Pekui
value of
nefesh,
it.
saving a life, protecting health in the
It's not
wide
working.
sense. So Genesis 1:26-27, every human being is created B'Tselem Elohim in the image of God,
Yeah.
and therefore every human life is sacred.
Okay. So
And it has to do with disordered, so food-related health issue would be disordered eating.
well, there are many, yes, absolutely, and that's why I have there. So there are many ways of looking at health. So what I would say, most of us kind of perk up and think about health, pikuach nefesh, and food at certain junctures in life. It can be when you're feeling, God forbid, unhealthy, just like blah. It can be when you face a health crisis. It can be when you suddenly become responsible for the food, the dietary needs for another human being, like growing a family or taking responsibility for another person. There are many junctures in life when we become hyper aware of the health value, or maybe we read something in the public sphere and I don't want that to happen to me, so I'm going to now do this. So there are many drivers behind that, but Judaism has always valued health. And I'm bringing this in the widest perspective possible. So certainly the person ingesting the food has an impact in terms of the choices they make on their health. That's what we're taught. But there are other people that actually, that having an organic, right? There are other impacts. I'm going to help broaden the conversation here. So does anyone have another value that may be connected to, I know you're jumping at the butt, but we're going to try to be as broad as possible here with people interacting.
Okay, so mine is fasting on Yom Kippur, not eating. And there's a school of thought that you shouldn't eat breakfast, that you should intermittent fast and give your body a break from eating. So the Jewish value of kind of fasting and giving your body that sense of quiet, perhaps this would be something contradictory.
Okay,
I'm reading into it.
That's good, and I like that. You're raising that now. And I'll just go out on a limb here, for the four rabbis here, that I was ordained, 28 years ago? And my classmate. And for like the last 3 decades, I've heard people, especially in the Jewish, how hard the fasting is, and it can be, But now suddenly, it's popular and even fashionable to do intermittent fasting, and everybody's running around fasting at different levels, and I know that can mean a lot of different things. I really understand that. But I find that just kind of funny, suddenly fasting is like a cool thing and a health thing. So yes, and that's another interesting thing. I am never going to make a recommendation about what is healthy or not healthy, right? And we often hear arguments coming out of the Jewish community about shellfish or about pork and saying, well, Jews did this because either they currently believe or they did believe that this was healthier, you know, pork and trichinosis, shellfish and hepatitis or whatever. Like, no, that's not it. That is actually not it. And I guarantee anything you argue in the food world, either from a secular point of view or a Jewish point of view, can be debunked. If you're saying it's healthy, you can also say it's not healthy, the way you just brought that up. So thank you. Okay, so back to organic, if it's okay with all of you. So we made the argument. Eating organic could promote pikuach nefesh and be healthy for the person who is eating. But are there other values on that list? I see you, Rabbi Messenger, but I'm going to, again, wait for the ringers for the really hard questions. So, Suzanne?
Oh, wait,
You have pikuach nefesh?
concern for the environment.
Ah, thank you. You got it. Give me a number. Give me a number there. It's 14. Number 14. Bal tashchit. Concern about destruction of the environment, sometimes also referred to as shomrei adama, guarding the earth, literally meaning do not waste. And I give you a proof text from Deuteronomy. That is the undergirding of all of this. I know you've been studying the Sacred Table with Rabbi Edelman, so I'm not going to go in depth into the proof text. Each chapter of the book is a proof text for the values. Providing many, many proof texts, actually, but it's the argument for the value. So yes, right? So when we add pesticides to the environment, there are pluses and minuses again, right? The plus, I mean, we talk about the green revolution, right? Especially in India, and how it brought people out of poverty because we were able to up food production so radically through fertilizers, through pesticides. So I'm not knocking that part of human ingenuity, but there's another side to it that we do need to be concerned with. And the question is, how can we do it in a sustainable way that aligns with Bal Tashchit, not destroying our environment, which we know the story about that. So with organic, we also hear that value, that Jewish value. Okay, there's a third one, I would argue. There is actually a third one. Rabbi Messenger's so excited about this. Wait 1 second. I was mean to Rabbi Bergson too, so. No, I know. Any, going once, going twice? Up, do you think?
Maybe. Oh,
Yeah, okay. With what number? 13.
yeah, that's what I was going to
Okay,
say.
nestled between 12 and 14. 13.
That says concern for oppressed food workers.
Okay, Oshek. So is abusing the workers who make the food, and here I teased it out to oppressed food workers, like the oppression of food workers, and avoiding, right? So usually you talk about like the financial dimension, but you know, we're eating I'll go to your broccoli example. We're eating the broccoli. And so now I'm eating regular broccoli, conventionally produced, and then I get concerned, okay, well, let me look at my budget. Maybe I can start affording to do the organic broccoli, or this week that's on sale, or whatever. I'm going to lean towards that choice. So I'm concerned about my personal health, or I'm concerned about my young child's health, or my elder's health, whatever it is. But there are people who stand in those fields every single day with those pesticides. And of course, our skin is the biggest organ in our body, right? And we hope that all those farms are following all of the guidelines that they're supposed to be following. But we also know there's a lot of abuse in that world. So from the planting, the preparing of the soil, the planting of the seeds, to the growing and the picking and the production and the packaging, there are people behind all of that are part of that food system. And in fact, what's interesting is that when we say motzi, right? What is the end of motzi in English? right? God who brings forth bread from the earth. Does bread come out of the earth?
No,
Right?
not directly.
Wheat does, barley does, grains do, rye, right?
Right.
Right? So Abraham Joshua Heschel talks about that and says that actually we should be thinking about that whole production line. Right? And that it's this miracle, it is a miracle. Fermentation is an amazing miracle. And it is mysterious and part of the creation. So that in some ways, bread comes forth of the earth in that manner. But ultimately, food production is a partnership, if you are so theologically inclined to believe, between God and humanity. Right? And the question is, are we doing our part on that one? So, okay. So, and thank you, Rabbi Edelman, for being so fair there. Yes? Yeah?
Kosher wine.
Okay. Yeah.
So I guess I had heard that the workers who actually prepare the kosher wine have to be a certain character of worker. Otherwise, they boil the wine or something?
You know what? I'm going to put that one on the side. The author of our wine article is actually here, my husband, Dr. Teddy Alanda. He co-authored that article. So if we have a little time to explore that, that is a really complicated, nuanced story, which I'm happy to go into. But right now, we're still on breakfast. So I'm hoping most of you have not had wine for breakfast. So, and if you, yeah, don't tell me. Tell me about the bacon. So let's hear someone else's food narrative, especially if it is different than Brenda. Okay, someone who has not spoken at all today.
What you eat for breakfast?
Your breakfast. Someone who wants to tell us.
Oh, I eat
You have
cereal.
not shared anything
Cereal.
today.
Go ahead, tell us what you eat.
I eat cereal with fruit on top, banana or
Well, what
strawberry.
is it? Fruit Loops? Captain Crunch?
Which is fine. Yeah.
What's the other one?
Do you have milk with your cereal?
Yes, milk.
Okay, milk and what
Lactaid milk.
Lactate milk, yay, hoo-hoo.
What kind of
Lactose
cereal?
intolerance.
Yeah, I'm going Wheaties or what's the one with the
I always say
Heritage flakes.
Heritage
Oh,
Flakes.
hey. That's our favorite too in our house.
I've seen it. They're very tasty.
Very tasty.
I mixed the two together.
Yeah. Okay, well, I always say lactose is the only tolerance I promote in my life. Okay. Okay, so again, and any coffee? Tea? Yep, okay. Yeah, tell us about the coffee.
Black Dunkin' Donuts.
Ooh, okay, very nice. Okay. Anybody drink a different type of beverage in the morning? Okay. Oh, your wife. So let's hear.
I always drink tea.
Tea. Okay.
Black or green tea.
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
Almond milk.
Almond milk. Okay.
Soy milk.
So I'm usually mixing up frozen orange juice. And so what I'm trying to do actually is avoid plastic. You know, hauling it home from the supermarket and stuff. So I don't know how that factors into everything.
Okay, avoiding plastics, microplastics.
Frozen, legitimate processing.
Okay, so we're starting to hear a repeat of some of these values, right? We're starting to hear concern about pikuach nefesh, of health. We're hearing concern about the environment. We're hearing, you know, by extension, the workers. Any other? Yes, Rabbi Messenger. I'm going to let you talk now.
I have caring community.
And
So I have caring community, and it talks about volunteering to work in a food bank or in a community sense about providing meals, and how it can be set up to minimize public knowledge of the family's problems.
Yep,
So
give me half a second. Number 17.
Number 17, because like a school lunch program or a school breakfast program is caring for those who cannot get the right amounts of proper food. And similarly, I was thinking about in our community, our greater food bank has satellite food banks so that we cover more of the community, which I think is another way of making sure that people who aren't getting the right things get the right things. And yeah, so, oh, I know, the one last thing is we have a kosher pantry for Passover and for other times. So if people need kosher food, they can go to JFS and get a kosher pantry.
Jewish Family Services.
Mm-hmm.
So, and what is your community? Your community is, you are from?
Oh, New Orleans.
New Orleans. So Rabbi Messenger has come all this distance just to study this afternoon. So let's unpack some of the things that you tossed out there, because we heard number 17, what it means to be in community with each other and make sure that everybody has access. So we all know Whole Foods has kind of, let's call it, evolved over the years from where it started. But, you know, you can still call it whole paycheck, right? The honesty, and there's a chapter in the Sacred Table about this, to eat, you know, I'm going to call it with perfection, with the understanding there is no perfection, as we've already touched upon. You know, you can make an argument for eating a certain way, and you can debunk it in 5 seconds. You can be striving from one value and not be able to achieve another value because of the way you're trying to uphold another value. You could really make yourself crazy when you talk about food values. So, but we have to admit that as we focus on our own individual or communal eating, that there are people who are not able to do that. And unfortunately, over how long was the government shutdown? The 40, right? It's like biblical, actually. It's like 40 days and 40 nights. It would end up being, right? Yeah, it was 43, exactly. And now it is ended, but we all know that it's going to take quite some time to undo what was done. And one of the things that is still very precarious is our local feeding programs. People, for many different reasons, need help accessing food. Sometimes, and the vast majority, have to do with economic issues, but it can also be transportation or ability, right? Whether it's because of disability or disability through aging. There are many different reasons. And people, on top of that, have specific dietary needs, right? You could do a whole, you know, analysis of all the different type of dietary needs. Many health-based, right? I need gluten-free. I'm allergic to this. I'm diabetic. Like, there are many, many needs there. And then there are other. I need halal meat because I'm Muslim. I need kosher because I'm Jewish and this is the way I approach my food. And then there are spiritual needs. It's Friday. I'd like to have a challah, but I can't afford a challah. It's Passover, and I'll need matzah, and I can't afford matzah. I can't access matzah. Like, whatever fill in the blank that is. I need gluten-free matzah, which is, by the way, super expensive and super rare to find. So there are many reasons why, as we think about our values, we have to think about other people's needs and how we are helping them, whether it's advocating at the political level, the local, state, or national level, or we're thinking as a Jewish community, what happens to the leftovers? You know, this is one of the questions I always challenge communities about. What happened? And if the answer, by the way, is, well, we recycle them, and the own egg cookies we eat all week long, and when the religious school kids come, or you know, everybody brings a plastic bag or a Tupperware or whatever, and we all, you know, take it home, that's okay. But we all know the statistics about landfill, by the way, and how much food goes into landfill versus all the people who actually need food. You know, so one of the synagogues I worked at at the end, when we had big Shabbat dinners, a couple times a year with a religious goal or a holiday or something, that we packed up the food and we brought it to people within the temple community who were not able to come out of their homes, and we dropped it off for them so that they could have, 2 or 3 chicken dinners and the fixings and whatever, and then they had that. Or we dropped it off at the local feeding program, which, by the way, is not so simple to do because there are many liability issues and laws, even though there are also laws to protect us from that liability, but a lot of places now won't take it. So it's not as simple, and you always have to ask and have it all set up in advance. But the point is that we always have to be thinking about that. So that is a pretty important value. Rabbi Messenger also mentioned those specific holidays and things like that. So let's look at those values. Who has values attached to a specific holiday? Jewish holiday? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I have one attached to
Okay. So what number?
number 1.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
So you should eat challah on Shabbat, or on other holidays you should have traditional foods that are associated with those holidays.
So is that keeping kosher? Is that to the room? If I have a challah on a Friday night, am I keeping kosher? Maybe. Rabbi Berkson saying maybe. I would say maybe. If you remember at the beginning, I said there's a buffet of choices. And some of those are ritual, some of those are spiritual, some of those are ethical, right? There are, and kind of some go like pikuach nefesh, you may be somewhere in crossing sections there, that these are different, many people say of their Judaism, I'm culturally Jewish. Or they'll say of their Jewish dietary practice, like that's an important part, but it's a cultural thing, right? They're bagel Jews. Like sometimes people say, I'm a bagel Jew. So it doesn't mean that they have holes in their body. It means that they have an affinity for these Jewish foods and the taste that we pass from generation to generation. But that's the limits of their interaction with Judaism, or so they think, by the way. I would say so they think. And that's, again, good. I mean, that's fine and good. That's fine and good. So there are many different ways to approach this. And we have to be careful to understand that there are many ways to be Jewish, right? Many. So here in North America, we often think of an Ashkenazic approach to food as the cultural Jewish food. The bagels, the kugel, like you can fill in the blanks on that. But the reality is that we have a diverse Jewish community filled with many, many people who bring many culinary traditions with them, Jewish culinary traditions that have been influenced by where their families have come from throughout the world. And they're beautiful. Today everybody in America seems to eat hummus, but that of course, is not exclusively Israeli or Jewish. It is definitely not, but we have a connection to that through Israel and the Middle East and Middle Eastern type foods. And again, you can go anywhere in the world and there are Jewish culinary traditions. One of the other beautiful things about our Jewish community, any Jewish community anywhere in the world, is that we have people who have chosen Judaism and converted to Judaism. And they bring their culinary traditions with them too. And often they bring them into Judaism in interesting ways. You could probably write a whole book on that one alone. One of my former congregants converted to Judaism, and then years later studied for adult bat mitzvah with me and a group of folks in my congregation. And we had a Tu B'Shvat Seder together. We were marking the New Year of the trees, and we had all these symbolic things, and it was a potluck, and everybody had to bring their own bring some food so we could have, wonderful Tu B'Shvat Seder. This woman brought her mother's Christmas fruit cake. And it was just like, that is brilliant. And she was so proud to bring her mother's Christmas fruit cake. And everybody sat there and go like, wow, that is a surprising twist. And it made perfect sense, right?
Yeah.
Right, 100%. I mean, I know people have feelings about fruitcakes, but that's okay. That's okay. It was delicious. It was delicious. She did a great job of it. But that was really cool. And that is part of the evolution and expansion of Judaism. So that also is a again, so if you're thinking of kashrut from our liberal, progressive point of view, reform point of view, as what is your Jewish relationship with your food? You see where we're going here? We have this cookie cutter kosher, right, that we all come in with, and now we're starting to see this expansion. So I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I'm sure during the break, if we talk to Rabbi Metzinger and the things that she sees in the New Orleans community, that there's some really funky traditions there in the Jewish community as well. The South period, yeah, exactly. So, and there, again, whole books on these topics. Okay, so let's see, how did we get to Shabbat? Oh, right, so are there any other values here with Shabbat and other holidays and things like that?
I just like to say that the cantor makes challah, but she makes a gluten-free challah. She made a pumpkin challah a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Last night was a water challah. So it was delicious. So she experiments with all different kinds of halot that meet the needs of the community.
That's cool. And that infusion of different seasonal whatever. Yep, cool. Very cool. Yeah.
No, it's just funny you were talking about healthy food, and whenever I think of Jewish food, outside of Israel, of course, I don't think of healthy food. And I think of calorie-laden, very heavy, fried, the latkes, which is delicious, but best fried in oil, and all sorts of challah with all sorts of dairy in it, and the brisket that I make is not calorie-free, but delicious. So that contradicts the idea of necessarily taking care of your body, but of course, there's joy in eating.
There is joy
the food
in eating.
that
there should be joy in
we
eating.
love.
And this is also that the foods we think of, those kind of very rich foods, are the showstoppers, right? These foods are not meant to be eaten every single day, right? That people in the ancient world did not eat meat every single day. We live in a society where people eat so much meat, for better or worse. And the diets we have, I mean, this is going back to food scarcity. I mean, this is really the shame of food scarcity. We have so much food in this country, so much food and so much abundance. And the Jewish foods we tend to think of were from the holiday table or from the Shabbat table, which is a mini holiday. So this was the highlight of the week. The first chief Ashkenazic rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Kook, that he was famously vegetarian except on holidays and Shabbat, when he would have some meat. But it was the exception. It wasn't the general practice. So yeah, like if you think kugel and latkes and like that's the Jewish profile you think of when you think of Jewish food. But those are the showstoppers. Those are the bring out the fireworks moments, and not actually daily food. Yeah, cabbage and potatoes, at least in that part of the world, yes. Okay, so Brenda and then Grace? And then Brenda. Right, deli culture. Yeah, yes, today, yes, that. But again, deli meat is of course a tradition from many places in the world based on preserving meat, right?
Right, the corned beef, the pastrami, full of nitrates, fat, salt.
Yes, that is true.
Even if it's kosher.
Yep. Recommend the documentary Deli Man, by the way. It's an old, some of you have seen it, old-time movie that goes through deli culture in America and kind of the ways it's waning. And right now, delis are having a little bit of a resurgence. Not their kosher style, I would say, not kosher, but little resurgence going on in that world. Okay.
There was someone else.
Yeah, Grace?
I was just going to say, going back to what you said about different foods from different places. Live in Long Branch, and we're adjacent to Deal and the whole Sephardic community. And the Stop and Shop that's in Long Branch has a lot of Sephardic. So Passover is like a thing to read every label because there's a lot of things in it that that I wouldn't eat. I mean, whether it's rice or peanut, whatever they. But the biggest thing that I've seen is just things like Manischewitz or all these other companies have put baking soda in there and powder in there. If you read the labels, it's all in their list, which is you can't even find something that doesn't have it in it. And when I asked them, at the supermarket, of course, they said, well, they're Sephardic, and so my wife uses that all the time. So it was interesting that, again, very different foods or rules or whatever, things that,
So actually, let's land on that for half a second. So Grace is talking about Passover-specific rules. So we talked about value number 1 on the sheet, which is the cultural expression, right? Like symbolic foods and things like that. And some of them are commanded, like to eat horseradish, to eat bitter herbs, which from an Ashkenazic point of view would be horseradish, but it can be any bitter herb. And you can discuss amounts and things like that. But then there are laws having to do with the ritual of the food beyond symbolic foods. So number 18, I did separately, as you have the positive commandment for Passover, mitzvah commandment, to eat matzah. Doesn't mean you have to eat it for 7 or 8 days, depending on your tradition. But at the Seder, you are commanded to eat matzah. Again, that's gluten-free, discussion aside. And, Passover is the most marked ritual of Jewish life. Doesn't mean that it's with all the exactness that perhaps any rabbi would want, but it is the most marked ritual of Jewish life, which probably means the meal. And my guess is that most people, despite anything else that's ingested, have a box of matzah. That's the way they probably know it's Passover. So again, my example being, when we talk about, if you're a liberal Jew and do you keep kosher, meaning is your dietary practice being shaped by Jewish tradition and law? Yes, right? Yes, actually it is, because maybe you eat matzah, when you sit down for that Seder. Then there's the other commandment, the negative commandment of not eating chametz, those things that are leavened, which refers to the 5 grains. My son went to Jewish day school and had to take tests when he was little. He's now 25 and a real adult, but when he was a little child and had to take tests, I remember, his having to memorize, and I wish I'd known this for rabbinical school. So I was like, okay, we have to find an acronym for the 5 grains, because I always forget the 5 grains. So I finally came up with brows, like eyebrows. Okay, yeah. Barley, rye, not rice, rye. Okay, get to the, okay. Oats, W. Wheat, spelt, right? Feels so good to say that word, doesn't it? Spelt. So that's one of those words, feels good. Okay, and of course, any derivatives, like there's the ancient grain of Arameth, or whatever you pronounce, right? That's related, it's an ancient form of wheat, so that's like, no. So those are the 5 grains, and if those 5 grains are allowed to ferment and rise or combined with yeast in any way, shape, or form, outside of the official 18 minutes of water and rising and baking and all that stuff, then they are chametz. They are puffed up. So that is, they are leavened. So then there's another tradition, which is what Grace described from the Ashkenazic point of view, of what we call kitniyot. And kitniyot is problematic because these are things, there are many different reasonings for the reason for the category of kitniyot, most of which have pretty weak, very weak connections. Now, you heard Grace speak with some passion there about her family tradition and strictness in this category, and many of you may fall in that. And I say to you in Yiddish, sei gesund, good health to you. Go ahead, enjoy your not having your kitniyot at Passover. It's a family tradition, it's a cultural tradition, it's part of Judaism. Enjoy. But if you're sitting here and you're like, for years, I can't do Passover because all these rules, and I can't have my toast, but I can't also have my rice, and I can't have my quinoa, and all these other things, don't do it. Meaning, don't get involved because, yes, maybe you grew up or you had a grandparent who told you or whatever, that you remember that you weren't supposed to have this whole other secondary category of things. If that is what's breaking this for you, put it aside, as many modern Jews have today, and just focus on the actual laws of keeping Passover and not have the 5 grains in a way that is risen and leavened. And make it easy on yourself. And there's a whole movement, even in Israel, among Ashkenazic Orthodox young people, where they are doing this. And there are a lot of good reasons to do it. And there are also very valid reasons to adhere to the old ways and to have this living tradition. So that's where I'm going to leave that one. I will say, Grace, I will say, baking soda actually is not a problem. Well, maybe during the break we'll talk about that more in depth, because baking powder is, because it has corn. It usually has a corn or kitniyot base, and therefore it's the kitniyot and not the rising. But baking soda is actually, in even Ashkenazic cooking, a staple of allowing things to rise a little bit, or else we'd never have like sponge cake and things like that, Passover sponge cake. I think we're getting, how am I doing on time? I can't remember. I have half an hour, right?
Yes.
Half an hour. Okay. Great. So let's look at this list very quickly. We're just going to peruse the list and see what other things are here that have not been raised. Rabbi Elman, thank you so much for doing this. So earlier, let's see, you mentioned fasting earlier, number 2. So number 1, we went through completely. People never really think of fasting as a practice of kashrut. So I offer that as a practice of kashrut. Because again, it's what's your Jewish relationship with food. And if you're deciding not to eat at a specific moment in time because of what your Judaism is instructing you, then your Jewish relationship with food has led you to not eating, which is fasting, right? It's a refraining from. So, and there are, many, everybody knows Yom Kippur, but there are other ones, some of them full fast, partial fast, there are all sorts of things. Suda mitzvah, number 3, is a commanded meal, meaning one that follows maybe a life cycle event like a wedding or a bar mitzvah, a bat mitzvah, a bris, and even funerals where we call it the meal of consolation. And that comes back to the idea of community, the idea that in both directions. In certain communities Jewish communities throughout the world, when we were more ghettoized and more insular, you were expected to invite everybody to your simcha, to your joyous event, and to provide food. Rabbi Neil Gold, our friend, our classmate, wrote in the Sacred Table about this in the introduction to his article, and talks about, gives a little anecdote, it's actually quite engaging, about basically the beggars of the community boycotting the wedding for a specific reason because they don't like the way they've been invited and whatnot. It's a cute thing to read. And this idea that there's this symbiosis that you're supposed to invite the whole community if you can afford to do that, but if you can't, then it's beholden on the community to help you make the simcha, the meal, the commanded meal. So if, God forbid, there's a bride and groom who can't afford to make a party afterwards, we have to step up and make that party for them. And even in my rabbinate, I've had occasions where I've had congregants who couldn't afford the bat mitzvah party or whatever. And we created potlucks in the community, and it was beautiful and heartfelt, and nobody needed to know the exact reason why we were doing that, and we made it happen.
I was going to say, at Shivas, people come together as a community and bring food to help the family.
Yeah, absolutely. Good example. So then we're up to food blessings. We talked a little bit about motzi in passing. Deuteronomy 8:10 tells us, you shall eat, you shall be satisfied, you shall bless Adonai your God. We have the longer Birkat HaMazon blessing. You have different versions of it in the Reform world, but it's a longer blessing. We do our short one-liners before we eat for the most part. And, but this idea of intentionality. We of course now talk about spirituality and meditation and mindfulness. Well, this is Jewish mindfulness. This idea of not just diving into our food, but pausing and thinking for a moment. And again, like many people today will take a deep breath before they eat to try to center themselves and not just be rushing and try to appreciate what's in front of them and have a better relationship with their food. That is a Jewish bracha, a blessing to sit and actually recognize what's in front of you, what's on the plate, what blessing to use, and to take that moment and think about the food. That is another Jewish food value. Then the question of, are Jews intended to be omnivores or vegetarians? That's chapters in the book. Again, I know some of you are all studying this, so I'm not going to go into great depth about this. I talked about Rav Kook and about his omnivore, but he really was like a vegetarian approach. And here there's an argument in the creation narratives that we are meant to be vegetarian. But then after the Noah story, it seems that we definitely are allowed to eat meat. And part of the reason given in that narrative is that this impulse towards violence is, rather than putting it upon each other, that we're allowed to eat meat, and we put it into not hunting, but into food production through animals, eating meat. And you can, again, argue both sides of this, what we should be doing now. Some say that it's in the world to come that we'll all be vegetarian, again, theologically, if you believe that. And some say, no, actually, we need it to do now to bring a more perfect time to our present world. So you can argue that both ways. We talked about not eating pork. I put this one separately in 7 because it is it's the paradigm of treif, of things that we're not supposed to be eating, of the forbidden foods. Pork, both in our texts, as I've given you the proof text, are specifically called out, and certainly sociologically, it serves as like this paradigm of what is not Jewish. And so you'll see in the sacred table at the beginning of that book, we have a section called Little Bites, where different members of the Jewish community, Reformed Jewish community, have offered just these short little statements of their view of their Jewish dietary practice. And you'll see that there are a couple where people, especially our friend and colleague, Rabbi Joel Abraham, talks very passionately about eating a full diet, eating things that are considered by Judaism to be forbidden, like treif and bacon and pork and things like that. And that's very much part of his ideological mindset. So, not eating shellfish. We're told that we can only eat things in the ocean that have fins and scales, and shellfish, of course, do not. So that becomes, again, the paradigm of the things we don't. There are other fish that are like bottom feeders, thank you, that have very smooth, they don't have catfish, that's what I was thinking of, catfish. They don't have the right type of scales. Refraining and only eating kosher birds. In the Torah, there is a list. You find in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, these are the ones that are allowed. This creates problems, by the way, when the Jewish community finally settled in America and turkey was eaten, because turkey is not on the list. There, of course, if you create a list in the middle of the Middle East of birds that are allowed, that list is going to be different in different parts of the world, and then you need rabbinic decisions about it. But it does show the pragmatism of Judaism and the development, although, of course, there are still groups within Judaism, mostly ultra-Orthodox or Hasidic, that do not eat turkey, believe it or not. Again, it's not so big a deal for them because they're not so into American holidays anyhow, but yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The prohibition of eating pork and shellfish from the Bible, did that stem from the reasoning behind it? I can't remember. Was it health concerns mainly, or?
So no, that has been layered onto it by Jews who were
That's what I
especially
thought.
trying to make our Jewish community seem more rational, and from an assimilation point of view, make it seem like we weren't nuts. And no, I mean, we actually don't know most of the reasons for these things.
Yeah, that's what I was
Right.
wondering.
We actually do not know. I mean, there are, again, volumes and volumes written about the whys behind the ones that are strictly ritual. And to me, there actually is a lot of value in something that is strictly ritual. I think, and this afternoon, further into the afternoon, I should say, that we will look at some texts that I think are helpful in thinking about what it means to jump through a spiritual hoop. And to me, that actually is an important practice. And again, I'm always happy to share the punchline early. So, for me, kashrut and keeping kosher, the way I keep kosher as a liberal rabbi, this is not, I'm not Orthodox, I don't do orthopraxy, that to me it is very meaningful because I carry it with me wherever I go. It is, I eat a minimum of 3 times a day. And it is a part of my practice. And, I certainly did not grow up keeping kosher the way I keep kosher now. I was aware of keeping kosher through my grandparents. There were certain things that we did not do at our family table. There was never a pork roast, for instance. Sometimes there was bacon at breakfast. There was never a pork roast. We never had milk and meat, like a glass of milk at dinner. Like there were these nods to kashrut. And so to me, I find that the way I've constructed today, and we as a family have constructed it today, to be very meaningful for me. You could say that there are other things that we do, like our prayers, our set prayers that we do communally, putting on a tallis, wearing a yarmulke. These are all spiritual practices. And I love spiritual practices that use the wholeness of myself, meaning that it's not, Judaism to me is not just what we do when we're sitting here in the pew in the sanctuary, right? As Americans especially, we have this view as Americans, especially the one looking around this room the way we all grew up in our age bracket, that religion is the house of worship that you go to on the weekend. And when you sit in the pew, and what you do during that hour to hour and a half, and then you leave. Judaism is actually the opposite. Judaism is about what you do the minute you walk out that door and what you carry out with you. This is the place where you're supposed to have your cup filled, where you're supposed to be recharged, not only as an individual, but as a Jew, spiritually, ritually, ethically. And what you do when you walk out of the sanctuary and then you hang another left and you go to the parking lot and drive out of here, that actually matters more. So for me, that reminder, having to think about it every single time I eat, yeah, it's a pain in the neck. I go to regular restaurants, I go to anybody's home, but I still have to carry that with me. And I still have to think about it. And to me, that's the most holistic form of ritual Judaism. It's ethical and spiritual and everything else that I can carry with me. So that's what I would say. Let's just finish the list. So we've got to make sure we hit all of these. So we talked about, so then we have kosher butchering, right? Because there are people who eat kosher styles of meat, right? They go to, I guess, like the Carnegie Deli, right? That's not strictly kosher place. And that's okay for them. Or they make the brisket with the, secular normal brisket from ShopRite or whatever. And then there are people who seek out kosher butchered meat. And that can be an ethical choice, meaning you believe that there's a certain approach to how the animal's being treated, or health, because you may believe, and certainly, like Consumer Reports, when they do like the salmonella, statistics on chicken, like kosher meat actually scores really well on that, generally speaking. But again, you can debunk any of this. So then, not mixing milk and meat. Again, there's laws about that. Is that an ethical practice? It's certainly a ritual practice. Can it be an ethical practice when you're thinking about the treatment of animals, and especially about not boiling the calf in the mother's milk? Can you expand it and think about that? Is it a cultural thing, right? Because again, when you think of a Jewish table, you don't think of the glass of milk and a meatloaf, right? Right? That's really ingrained in us, right? Right? But when you speak to parents who grow up and are currently Christian, like they think it's almost like child abuse not to give your kid a glass of milk at dinner every night, right? And so again, there's just like something ingrained in us in terms of cultural feelings about this. Health we covered, Oshek we covered, Bal Tashchit we covered, Balei Tzor Chaim we covered, Tzedakah. We talked about caring community, and I think by extension we hit upon Tzedakah and what it means to make sure that we are supporting many different ways of, I feel like you all do gardening here, is that true? Yeah. Right, in the summer, right? You do mitzvah
garden, and then
mitzvah gardening, right? You do.
There's food left over.
Yep, yeah, right. I recall that. Yeah, please.
No, it's just occurring to me because Rabbi talks about this all the time, all the leftover food and how are we going to give it to those in need. But in getting back to the talk about the environment, if we buy a whole bunch of plastic to put it in, then we're not really, because years ago we did have a green committee here at the temple, and we moved to fair trade coffee and all sorts of things like that. And so to me, it's always interesting because I always think it would be great to just have a whole bunch of plastic containers, and that this way it's ready to give to the food pantry, and we're not first thinking about, okay, where are we going to put this stuff in? But then it goes against what we're trying to accomplish with not buying plastic at the synagogue. So it's interesting.
And that goes back to there's no perfect, right?
Right.
There's absolutely no perfect. And I guarantee that any value that you choose to uphold, on this list, which is not comprehensive, it's pretty good, but it's not comprehensive. Any food value that you decide to uphold, it will be in conflict with another value. And that is actually most of life, right, when we think about our values. And part of it is just having the conversations of thinking about what are we trying to prioritize at this moment, and not think of it as a binary. We can either do this, we can either be good to the environment, or we can feed the hungry, right? And there's nothing in between. Well, you're a bunch of smart people. And I'm sure that you can figure out some way, can you mitigate it a little bit? Can you make it a little worse, not worse, a little better, and feel a little bit better about the way that you're doing this process? Or to say, you know what, let's do this for 3 months and revisit it in 3 months, and maybe by then we've thought of another way. Maybe we need to talk to the food pantry and the feeding programs and find out what other folks do, right? And we're going to research this, but in the meantime, we're going to sacrifice one value for another. So, and hopefully along the way you find some balance. Yeah, Brenda.
Wait. Diane Keaton,
Yes.
Is it holding it right? Who recently passed away. There's a rejuvenation of certain movies. And I remember, and Woody Allen, whether you like him or not, was brilliant, where he looked away in disgust when she ordered roast beef with mayonnaise because it's white. So people think it's milk. And my own son, who's 41, when he worked at Butler's Deli, he was 14. I don't know if he'd ever seen the movie, but he came home. I didn't keep kosher, but he knew from Temple. He came home and he said, when they order ham on white bread with mayonnaise, I have to look away. It's like with a precursor, but mayonnaise is egg and oil.
It is egg and oil.
So it's okay, but
Yeah.
it's what we're used to. Like a Reuben sandwich, I put coleslaw on it. I can't, you know? Cheese is a whole other thing.
Yeah, there's this, in Yiddish, you could say it's tam, right? It's a certain taste and vision, absolutely. So I want to pause there because we've just gone through all the food values. We've hit all of them from the sacred table. Again, you could maybe pull out a few others, but that is the good foundation. And I will take a few questions, and then thank you for your help. Thank you. Yes, well done. Hope you all in the Zooming world, the streaming world, doing well out there. If not, we'll go to Phil's very complex question. So, Dr. Alanda, I will invite you if you want to jump in on this topic. So, kosher wine has many, many laws behind it. Again, this is an area where even in the Orthodox world, there's a lot of tension about it, especially among the younger Orthodox people in Israel. Again, my friend here, Dr. Tati Alanda, is really an expert on this, which I am not. But there's, in all of kosher food, there is the issue of whether or not it's produced in a way, so this goes back to your broccoli video, from the minute it is, whatever original food product is coming out of the ground to the moment it is packaged and sent to you, or wherever you buy it, what happens in between. And we always talk about, kind of this ridiculous, like I remember growing up and this being explained to me, I don't know where, maybe in Hebrew school, if it's being produced in a factory and the worker is eating a ham sandwich over the soup barrel, and bites into it and a piece of ham falls in, that kind of thing. So you need rabbinic supervision to track it from like the moment to the beginning to end. So, which of course, like as an adult now, I'm like, well, that's kind of a crazy way to describe it, even though it's kind of true, because like we also have an FDA, in theory, that, it's supposed to, no, they just cut back, right, they got rid of most of that, that it's supposed to protect us in general in food production. And people aren't supposed to be eating sandwiches when they're over whatever. And in fact, I have served as a mashgicha, as someone who's overseen a bakery, which is not that complex, because everything that came into the bakery, in theory, was supposed to be certified kosher. And some things were dairy, meaning made with dairy products, and some things were parve, devoid of any dairy product and devoid of touching anything that ever touched a dairy product. And in fact, I quit this particular bakery, which is since out of business, because I came in once too many times for a surprise visit and found the cheesecake on the parve counter. So, and I said to them, I cannot uphold, the standard and say that you're adhering to this when you keep doing this. So, so that is one part of kashrut. Now, if you are in your home and you are making, or just keep with the soup, making very complicated soup, and at some point something happens and something by accident drops into your soup that will render this unkosher, or not what you, like it's milk gets into the meat, or meat gets into the milk, or milk or meat gets into the parve, like whatever it is, like something happens that now renders it not, supposedly renders it not kosher. And you discover this after, and it was an accident, and it wasn't premeditated. Outside of Passover, if it's less than 1/60th 1/60th of the food, it is still kosher. So even there's a pragmatism. So like, am I going to sit up worrying about the residue of bugs on my broccoli? I am not. I am not. I don't think most people, you know, at home I always make the joke, it's more protein. But most people don't want bugs in their broccoli, no matter what their approach to dietary practices. Some people are proponents of eating bugs, by the way. My friend Rabbi Neil Gold and I regularly send each other articles about eating crickets and things like this. This is our geeky hobby, and one day we will probably get to some sort of something where we're going to be eating this kosher together. But, yeah, we'll come. I'm still getting to wine.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point, honey.
I had your kids in Hebrew school, so so the 1/60th rule does not apply, by the way, for Passover. And it cannot be premeditated. It can't be like you're making pea soup and you think like, well, this one little piece of ham will give it a little extra flavor, but it's less than 1/60th, so it's still kosher. No, that does not work that way. And it doesn't work on Passover. Passover, the strictness is quite strict, as you all know. So that is the story about wine production in part. But then there's secondary rules having to do with who produces it. And this becomes, I'm just telling you right now, uber uncomfortable. I do not personally follow this part of the rules. Again, even in Israel and the Orthodox community, there's a lot of striving back and forth with this. From a strictly big O, Orthodox point of view, that if someone is a non-Jew, they cannot be touching any of the wine during its production. And even once the bottle is there, and like the waiter in the restaurant, if that waiter is not Jewish, it renders the whole bottle not Jewish, unless it's mivushal, which is boiled. This is why, one of the reasons, it's also fortified with sugar, mivushal. Mivushal does not taste as good, right? Would you say across the board? Do you want to add anything? You could add, yes, please. And then back to the content of the wine, as my husband's favorite topic, there are thinning agents. When in the production of wine, there's gunk that needs to be removed from the wine, so then we have a nice, clear, consistent bottle of liquid. Thinning agents are used to take out. In many fine non-American, especially European, especially in the past, they used actually blood, ox blood and things like that to use as a thinning agent. And in current conditions, many places use fish or milk, dairy products, to do this. Fish is not problematic in terms of kosher unless the fish isn't kosher. Dairy obviously then makes the whole bottle of wine dairy. But the bigger problem is also disclosure and pikuach nefesh, because people have allergies. People have allergies, and you could end up with someone having a very serious allergy over this. There are countries like New Zealand, yes, and Australia, yes. Anywhere else I should mention? No. See, I do listen when he talks. That have very good labeling on this. But many places, especially Europe, do not. Okay, anything else I should mention? Yep, microphone. Here, don't trip. You can stand right there, right there. Don't stop.
Yeah, so in terms of why the mivushal, right? Why do we have this? So it has to do with the production, but it goes back to, was this wine used for by someone non-Jewish to serve to their sacrifice to idols, basically. So that's what it goes back to.
It's a suspicion. A suspicion based on moments in Jewish history, especially ancient Jewish history, very ancient, right, where non-Jewish communities were trying to basically fool with the Jewish wine and sacrificing it to gods.
Right. So it's a concept called yain neshech. Right. So yeah. So if you then boil the wine, it was no longer fit for that ritual purpose. So at that point, it can't be sacrificed to someone else, and we don't have to worry about who touches it or who does anything else with it. So that's part of the reason why, for those who stick to the Melville Shaw concept, at least now it's a flash pasteurization that is happening, so it's not the old full boil. But there are some challenges with that too, because if you want to age the wine, you stop any development that a wine has. So it does taste a little bit different, but it's now flash pasteurization that is the thing. In terms of other reasons for why some wines are kosher versus not, there's in Israel, a lot of Jewish producers of wine, they do not want to get into the political aspect of the certification process. There's a whole host of issues there I don't want to get into here, but you will find a lot of wines that would not naturally be kosher, but they're not certified because there's a whole other political thing around getting those types of certifications. So happy to follow up with more details around that, but there's a lot of things in that space, and you talked about the production process, and it's not that it has to be a Jew, it has to be a Sabbath observant, a Shomer Shabbat Jew, meaning an Orthodox Jew, all the way through the process. Once it has been harvested, then from there on you have to have an observant, Shabbat observant Jew every step of the way. So there are lots of winemakers who make kosher wine, but who are them Jewish, self-Jewish, but not observant. They can't go in and taste the wine themselves. They have to have someone else take something out of the barrel. Then they can taste it and say, do X, Y, Z. Somebody else has to do it for them. So that's the level of observance in that production. So yeah, I think I'll stop here. So.
Okay, thank you. And actually for Brenda. So we're going to end in 2 minutes, but I want to make sure we answer Phil's other question.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Who decided all this?
You're talking about
having
this is
ultra-observant Jews.
Sure, this is 3,000 plus years of rabbinic development. That's really
so.
And this is the layers of you could do a whole other session of showing the Torah roots, the rabbinic process in the Talmud, the responsa, modern responsa. I mean, you could go through all of that.
So there's origins in the Torah.
Yes. And sometimes you have to squint really, really, really hard to see that origin.
Oh, that's what I was
wondering,
and again, where it was.
Yeah, and you've been running around with the microphone, so you haven't, been focusing on the sheet. I've tried to give you at least one proof text per value, but again, in the sacred table, there's a chapter on each one where it really fleshes things out as much as possible. And again, most of these could be a book to themselves. Okay, so Phil's second question, so I'm going to ask all of you a question in return, very rabbinic. So there are 2 food products that are from non-kosher animals that are permissible and considered